어서 오십시오. 환영합니다. 제17회 제주 포럼에 오신 여러분 진심으로 감사의 인사를 드리겠습니다. 반갑습니다. 저는 오늘 사회를 맡은 아나운서 정종우입니다. 안녕하세요. 자, 지금부터 폭력에 저항하는 부드럽지만 강력한 힘, 문화예술이란 주제로 문화 세션을 시작을 하도록 하겠습니다. 앞서 안내를 해드렸습니다. 한국어, 영어, 러시아어가 동시로 진행이 되겠으며 통역기 1번은 한국어, 영어는 2번, 그리고 러시아는 3번으로 설정을 하시면 되겠습니다. 자, 그리고 청중 분들과 발표자분들께서는요, 마스크를 반드시 착용해 주실 것을 다시 한 번 더 부탁을 드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 그럼 본격적으로 세션을 시작하기 앞서 본 세션의 주제를 담은 샌드 아트 퍼포먼스 공연이 있겠습니다. 큰 박수로 함께 만나보겠습니다. 네, 여러분 공연 잘 보셨는지요? 같은 영상이지만 보는 입장에 따라 받아들이는 감명이 제각기 다르리라 생각이 드는데요. 조금 더 희망의 속삭임을 알려주는 감명 깊은 공연이었습니다. 자, 조금 전 샌드아트에는 강은의 제주 아티스트가 참여하였고요. 샌드아트가 독보적이게 연출된 음악은 문효진님의 창작곡인 해녀가와 제주 아리아였습니다. 자, 두 분께 여러분 큰 감사의 박수를 한 번 더 부탁을 드리겠습니다. 다음은 본 세션 개최를 축하해주기 위해 제주특별자치도의회 문화관광체육위원회 이승아 위원장님께서 이 자리에 함께 하셨는데요. 앞으로 모셔서 환영사를 함께 이어가도록 하겠습니다. 여러분 큰 박수로 무대 위로 모셔보겠습니다.
안녕하십니까. 제주특별자치도의회 문화관광체육위원회 위원장 이승아입니다. 2022년 제17회 제주포럼 문화섹션 개최를 진심으로 축하드립니다. 오늘 폭력에 저항하는 부드럽지만 강력한 힘, 문화예술이라는 주제로 귀한 행사를 준비해 주신 제주특별자치도 관계자를 비롯하여 좌정을 맡아주신 김동현 제주민해총 이사장님, 올가 그레벤니크 작가님, 올레나 시돌축 배우님, 김순 작가님, 강혜명 감독님께 감사 말씀을 드립니다. 또한 갈등을 넘어 평화로 나아가고 공정과 협력을 이뤄내기 위한 이 소중한 담론의 장에 함께 자리를 빛내주신 내빈과 참석해주신 여러분들께도 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 지난 2월 24일 믿을 수 없는 비극적인 일이 벌어졌습니다. 러시아는 선전포고도 없이 일방적으로 우크라이나 무력 침공을 강행하였고 연일, 어린이, 임산부 등 민간인이 사망했다는 안타까운 소식들이 전해져 왔습니다. 과연 이 평화를 논하는 이 시대에 있을 수 있는 일일까요? 국제사회의 평화를 위협하고 무고한 인명피해를 야기하는 불법적인 무력행위는 그 어떠한 경우도 정당화될 수 없습니다. 우리는 이 비극적인 일을 멈추고 다시는 일어나지 않도록 그 어느 때보다 연대하여 강력한 힘을 보여줘야 할 때입니다. 무자비하고 잔혹한 폭력행위는 세계 평화의 섬 제주의 책임 있는 일원으로 좌시할 수 없는 일입니다. 이번 제주 포럼 문화 세션이 주제가 말하듯 문화예술은 가장 부드러운 방법으로 가장 강력하게 폭력에 저항하고 투쟁해 왔습니다. 이는 문화예술이 대중들에게 강력한 깨달음과 공감대를 불러일으켜 현실에 대한 깊은 고뇌를 통한 자각을 이끌어내기 때문이라고 생각합니다. 문화예술은 지금 이 시간에도 고통을 끓고 있는 전쟁뿐만 아니라 자국민 학살, 민주의식 탄압 등 어떠한 이유에도 정당화될 수 없는 폭력에 대해 날카로운 비판과 저항이 되고 한편으로는 피해자에 대한 따뜻한 위로와 연민으로 대중들에게 경종을 울리는 다양한 역할이 있을 거라고 확신합니다. 오늘 발표자분들을 비롯해 참석해 주신 모든 분들이 소중한 담론이 장이 되기를 바랍니다. 문화예술은 우리 삶 곳곳에 스며들고 있습니다. 간절히 바라건대 부드럽지만 강력한 힘을 가진 우리 모두의 문화예술이 갈등을 넘어 평화로 나아가고 공존과 협력을 이뤄내기 위한 요람이 역할이 되어 이 고통의 전쟁이 끝나기를 바랍니다. 여기 평화의 섬 제주에서 우리 염원이 간절히 이루어지기를 희망합니다. 끝으로 그동안 오늘 행사를 위해 큰 노력을 기울여주신 관계자 여러분께 다시 한번 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 감사합니다.
네, 우리 모두가 바라는 평화와 번영을 위한 환영과 그리고 이 자리를 더욱 축하하기 위해 좋은 말씀해 주신 우리 이승화 위원장님께 여러분 다시 한 번 더 큰 박수 한 번 더 부탁을 드리겠습니다. 자, 그럼 세션을 본격적으로 시작하기 위해 이번 세션의 좌장과 발표자님을 소개를 해드리겠습니다. 자, 이름을 호명해드리면 무대 위 자리로 착석을 해주시면 되겠는데요. 본 세션의 좌장이신 김동현 이사장님, 그리고 발표자이신 올레나 시돌축님, 김순 작가님, 그리고 강혜명 소프라노님께서 무대 위로 올라와 착석을 해주시면 되겠습니다. 자, 그리고 본 세션의 발표자이신 우크라이나의 올가 그레벤니크 작가님께서는요 온라인으로 참석을 하고 계십니다. 잠시 후 화면에서 만나보실 수가 있습니다. 자, 본 세션 김동현 사장님을 조금 더 소개를 해드리겠습니다. 현재 제주 민예총회 이사장님이시면서 문학 평론가로 활동을 하고 계신데요. 주로 제주 사산 문학과 오키나와 문학을 연구를 하고 계십니다. 자, 그럼 폭력에 저항하는 부드럽지만 강력한 힘, 문화 예술의 주제 문화 세션 좌장님께 마이크를 넘겨서 시작하도록 하겠습니다.
네, 안녕하십니까. 이번 섹션 좌장을 맡은 김동현이라고 합니다. 인류가 만들어낸 최악의 범죄가 전쟁이라는 말이 있죠. 그만큼 전쟁은 승자도 패자도 없고 오로지 상처만이 우리의 몸에 각인되는 고통의 시간들이 아닌가 싶은데요. 1차 세계대전, 2차 세계대전, 20세기의 전쟁의 시대였는데 21세기의 인류에게 이런 전쟁이 다시금 비극이 일어날까라고 하는 생각을 했는데 우크라이나에서 또다시 전쟁이 일어났습니다. 많은 분들이 고통스러워하고 있고 그리고 그 고통에 많은 분들이 눈물을 흘리고 있습니다. 그동안 여러 가지의 전쟁의 문제에 대해서 예술은 그 전쟁을 반대하고 폭력에 저항하는 다양한 활동들을 해오고 있고요. 그것을 통해서 평화를 이 땅에 꽃피우기 위한 노력들도 게을리하지 않고 있습니다. 그래서 오늘은 그런 폭력의 기억 그리고 학살에 대한 저항 그리고 비극의 경험들을 공유하고 그리고 평화를 염원하는 여러 문화예술에서 활동하고 계시는 분들의 경험들을 함께 공유하고 나누는 자리를 마련했습니다. 그럼 오늘 발표와 토론을 해주실 분들을 먼저 좀 소개를 해드릴까 하는데요. 첫 번째 발표자는 올가 그레벤니크 작가입니다. 지금 온라인으로 연결이 되어 있는데 우크라이나 전쟁이 발발한 직후에 불가리아로 피난을 갔는데요. 작업을 하고 있던 노트북도 미처 챙기지 못하고 피난을 갈 수밖에 없어서 지금은 핸드폰으로 접속이 되어 있습니다. 접속 환경이 대단히 불안정함에도 불구하고 이 제주 포럼을 위해서 함께 해주시고 계시고요. 두 번째 발표자는 역시 우크라이나에 오신 올레나 시돌축님입니다. 2016년부터 한국에서 방송과 모델 활동을 활발하게 하시고 계시거든요. 최근에는 영화 선산이라는 영화에도 출연하셨고요. 우크라이나의 전쟁이 터지고 나니까 우크라이나 전쟁 반대 그리고 전쟁 복구를 위한 다양한 민간 외교 역할을 마다하지 않고 계십니다. 여기 옆에도 부스를 마련해서 다양한 활동들을 하시고 계시고요. 오늘은 우크라이나 현지의 상황 그리고 국제사회가 어떤 연대를 해야 될지에 대한 이야기들을 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 다음은 김숨 작가님입니다. 한명, 제비심장 그리고 떠도는 땅이라고 하는 소설을 통해서 노동자와 그리고 위안부 그리고 디아스포라 고려인들의 이야기를 꾸준하게 발표를 해주시고 계시죠. 2020년 독일문학상을 수상하셨고요. 현대문학상, 이상문학상은 다수의 문학상을 수상하셨습니다. 시간과 역사에 대한 소설적인 사유, 그 지평을 넓혀가고 있다라고 하는 김숨 작가의 작업을 통해서 인간의 존엄성 그리고 소설적인 재현의 방식이 과연 우리에게 어떤 희망을 줄 수 있을지 그리고 어떤 기대를 걸 수 있을지에 대한 이야기들을 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 다음은 제주 출신 강혜명 소프라노 그리고 사삼 오페라죠. 순이삼촌의 감독 총예술 감독님 모셨습니다. 국내외로 다양한 활동을 하시고 계시고요. 소프라노 가수뿐만 아니라 예술 감독으로서 그 예술적 역량을 더 넓혀가고 계십니다. 최근에는 순이삼촌이라는 사삼 오페라도 총예술 감독으로 활동하셨지요. 국가폭력의 아픔을 음악으로 활동을 알리는 활동을 하시고 계십니다. 그럼 발표해 주실 분들 소개를 여기서 마치고요. 본 세션을 좀 시작해 보도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째 발표가 올가 그레벤니키님께서 발표해 주실 텐데 연필 평화를 위한 투쟁의 가장 중요한 도구에 대해서 발표를 해 주시겠습니다. 지금 줌으로 연결이 되어 있는데요. 한국어 통역은 1번 되어 있으니까 확인해 주시면 될 것 같습니다. 그럼 발표 준비되면 발표 듣도록 하겠습니다.
Добрый день. Я Ольга Гребенник. Хочу поблагодарить за интерес к моей персоне и к моей книге «Военный дневник», благодаря которой я здесь. Я художник-иллюстратор, которая до войны рисовала детские сказки, но 24 февраля моя жизнь изменилась. Мы можем это увидеть на видео.
Мы в лесу. Чудеса.
Я Оля Гребенник, художник-иллюстратор из Харькова. Сегодня я в безопасности, но мне и моей семье пришлось пережить 8 дней войны в Харькове. 24 февраля в 5 утра мы проснулись от взрывов. Мы тогда еще не понимали, что это за звуки. Мы провели 8 ночей в подвале под свист самолетов. Мне было страшно и тревожно, поэтому я рисовала. Есть война, а есть люди. И первое не считается со вторыми. И победителей в войне не бывает, потому что цена победы – это человеческая жизнь. Остановите войну! Остановите войну!
Итак, для начала обратимся к основным ценностям человека. И первое — это его корни. Именно корни дают связь между прошлым и настоящим. И когда эта связь целая, то у нас есть будущее. Но война выдергивает человека из земли, лишив его корней. Следующая ценность — это семья, потому что семья — основа и продолжение рода. Война разбивает семью.
This root. Family is the basis of connection between the world and the generation. And nature is also the same. The freedom is something we can complete our life. However, war is stopping us to approach to freedom and love. Without love, our life is just survivor. War is taking everything away from us. Of course, life is the most important thing more than ever. What does war teach to us? It's not just about losing everything. Our values is shaking as well. Material things would lose its values in the war. The most important thing is the communication with the most beloved people. All the pain and hurt becomes normal in the war. However, war makes us to adapt this painful experience and present. However, it also gives us the power to fight against this moment. So the most important thing is the language of art. Language of art is the language to express the human emotion. However, more and more people are forgetting about this important language. However, art makes us to share our emotion and feel this current status. Through art, my book came into the world, The War Diary. This book, War Diary, is about war, and also is about the people. In this book, while I'm making this book, many Russian women help me to evacuate from the war. There are many good people in many other countries, and they will win eventually. If I have hate or if I have hatred, that will be the failure. If I have any kind of hatred, it will make me fail to the war within myself. February 24th, I woke up in the war. From that moment, the tragedy began. I had to live under the ground, and my city became the field of war, and it became the gunfight field. Every night, we lived as this night is the last night of our lives. And I draw and I uploaded this drawing in social network services, so I could finally share my story to the world, how we made bed under the ground, how we bear this painful night. I felt I became a cockroach under this ground. It was painful. As we are bearing this painful day and night, finally, the day came to evacuate. I haven't seen my husband for last 6 months, and I am living in Bulgaria right now. Once again, I like to highlight that even in this tragic moment, the most important thing is people. I like to highlight that this once again. I truly hope that many people read my book and understand the circumstances, that the most important thing is the people and the humanity. Any kind of political ideology or any kind of political idea, more than that, the most important thing is the life and the people's life. Even though war destroy our life, we have to fight against that, and we have to fight against that with our goodness. Through this way, I truly hope that we can get over this tragic war and we can get back to our normal daily life.
네,
Thank you for your presentation. So war is something that destroys everything. And after the bombing, because of the war, you said that you felt like a cockroach living in the basement. So this is a kind of story that one can share only after experiencing the war herself. That is why your message has come across as very strong, because this is based on your personal story. Now let me move on to our next presentation, which will be given by Ms. Olena Sidorchuk, who will speak about how our lives were upended by the war. Ms. Olena? Good afternoon, everyone. As introduced, my name is Olena. I'm from Ukraine, and it's been 7 years since I came to Korea. Now, I would like to share what's happening in my home country. Our world was upended on February 24, 2022. Before that, we were living very happily. But from that day, a lot of things changed for no reason. Now we are living in a world where everyone, including men and women and children, are suffering. But I think we are kind of adapting to this tragic reality. However, killing people can never be justified. the current situation is very severe in Ukraine because of fight and war, and this is something that we shouldn't get accustomed to. In Ukraine, the war has raged on for over 200 days. And frankly speaking, this is unbearable. This has caused an unbearable situation in Ukraine. The people around us, especially our fathers and brothers and friends, are fighting at a war. A lot of stories I have been able to hear from my friends and families, and among them there are stories that are not reported by the news. A lot of regions in Ukraine have been destroyed by bombing. Civilians, everyday people who lived happily now have to go out of their hometown and go out of their normal lives because of war. And because of this crisis, a lot of people have been killed. And these people were just normal or just everyday people who hoped for a meaningful life. Just like all of us, they had hopes for their future, but now they died even though they didn't think of bombing or war that they suffered. I think I stay in a relatively safe place, but there are people who suffer from missile strikes, and I am hearing their stories every day, and those stories are very tragic. And this is the reality that they are facing now. Now I live in Korea, away from my hometown, but I am still hearing stories of tragedies that people in Ukraine are suffering every day. That is why I'm sharing this story to you today. People who are the closest to me and the relatives, they are people who are suffering. And so far, a lot of people have provided support for Ukraine. And a lot of NGOs are helping us as well, but one of them is the fellowship. I have had the chance to participate in a lot of activities to support Ukraine through the fellowship, and I am thankful to a lot of Koreans who have helped Ukraine. And I believe that the Korean people know too well about the tragedy of war. The situation that is going on now is not something that we should be accustomed to. This shouldn't be our normal life. This kind of continuous war shouldn't be our reality. Our next generations will remember this war as inhumane war, and they will say that this kind of history should never be repeated. Then how can we help Ukraine? When I think about it, Ukraine is an independent country. Therefore, Ukraine is a country that can realize the values of democracy. I think that is the key to delivering peace. Based on the fact that Ukraine is a democratic country, I am meeting you today, united in efforts to realize the values of peace and freedom. I feel the responsibility of protecting peace and freedom. I would like to thank the Jeju Forum for giving me an opportunity to raise awareness about Ukraine. Ukraine, a lot of things have changed for Ukraine, so that is why it deserves a lot of attention. Please visit the fellowship exhibition in the Jeju Forum and join me in providing support for Ukraine. And please sign the pledge by providing your signature. So just like the theme of Jeju Forum, which is beyond conflict and toward peace, I hope our world can actually move toward peace beyond conflict.
7년
Thank
전
you.
한국으로 온 우크라이나 출신 모델 올레나는
Please visit me
아직
at the
가족들이 우크라이나에 있습니다.
두 번째
전쟁 첫날부터
Thank you very much for
저희
your presentation,
아버지
Ms.
제일 먼저
시도르.
전쟁하러 나갔는데 오빠 정말 같이 있다가 아빠랑 같이 전쟁하러 나갔어요. 우리 삶 완전 바꾸기 시작했어요. 생각해보니까 한국에서도 역사적으로 보면 비슷한 일이 있었어요. 그래서 우리 그런 전쟁에서 아픈 일 다 잘 알아요. 그래서 되게 많은 분들 도와주실 거예요. 서로 도와주시면 우리 세상이 좀 평화롭게 삶 살 수 있어요. 예전으로 돌아가려면 되게 많은 도움이 필요합니다.
네, 여러분
Thank you very much for the video. War should not be the reality, and we should not adapt to this tragic war. And I believe we share very similar experience when we think about the April 3rd uprising in Jeju. And Ms. Sidor Chuk is promoting many activities home and abroad, so please give your support. Next, novelist Kim Sum will give a presentation with the title of People We Lost. Ms. Kim, the floor is yours. Greetings.
일본군
Japanese military sexual slavery victims, so-called comfort women, and the people who wander throughout the Far East, Korea people, the Korean diaspora of Russia, CIS, are suffered from ideological confrontation, greed, racial and ethnical discrimination, disregard for life-induced war. During the Sino-Japanese War and the Pacific War, the Japanese government mobilized Korean women to serve as Japanese military sexual slavery and placed them in the Japanese territorial conquests or the army post. Most of them were underage girls from poor family. Not only in Korea, Japan, China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Netherlands, and many other countries, lots of women were sacrificed. In 1937, in the far east of the Soviet Union, there were about 170,000 Koreans, and Stalin ordered the forced migration of them to Central Asia. During this forced migration, uncountable innocent Koreans were sacrificed. Survived Koreans had no choice but to disperse Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Ukraine. In 1919, with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the republics became independent, and many of the second and third generations of Koreans couldn't apply for the nationality recovery and became wandering stateless, so-called shadow identity. The victims of the war are not only in Korea, and they're not in the past. They are in the present as well, and unless we pray for each other's peace, it will be in the future. World War I, World War II, World War III, which we can dare put the name when we see the crisis in Ukraine during these wars. Too many innocent victims were dying or living in pain with trauma. We often see that the pain does not disappear and last to the next generation. Victims of war, sadly, were mostly children, women, the elderly, the poor, the uneducated people, and people who didn't even get a land to plant crops from their ancestors. They were always the most vulnerable. Greatness and the beauty of the humanity are not coming from the honor or wealth, but coming from caring and respecting the little people, and we know that too well. We were all babies born in women. My life is connected to your life. You might have different nationality, skin color, language, generation, or religion. Your life and your existence have minor or sometimes significant impact on my life, and to realize that simple truth we have gathered here. In Ukraine, there were Korea people before Russia invasion of Ukraine. There were about 40 to 50,000 stateless Korea people in Ukraine. February 24th, 2022, Russia launched missile attack over Ukraine capital city Kyiv. Shinjoya, the representative of Korea People Village, said, quote, "In the crisis of war, we have nowhere to ask for help because we are under shadow identity. We need help," unquote. There are more than 6 million Korea people evacuated from Ukraine, according to the news. And it includes 10-year-old girl Nam Anita and 13-year-old boy Che Mark. They evacuated to Moldova, Romania, Poland, Hungary, and Moscow, and passed Crimean Peninsula, Russia, Lithuania, Poland, and finally arrived in Korea. Even before became an adult, the girls became comfort women. And some are kidnapped by Islamic terrorist group and receiving terrible military training, and they are also boys and girls. In Africa, civil war causes extreme hunger to the children, and there are girls who became victims of sexual violence. Also, Ukraine crisis caused many children to become refugees. All those children, women, were our future, and they still are the future.
김순 작가님의 발표였습니다.
Thank you for your speech. Please give her a big hand. So how did you find this performance and presentation, the ballet performance under the theme of wandering? And you might also be surprised to find out that there are still stateless people living in Ukraine who were from Korea, and a lot of them actually fled their country and are dispersed across a lot of countries. Maybe this was a surprising fact to know for you. So in the past, a lot of people suffered from the oppression and dictatorship, but such pain is still going on. So in the face of this reality, what can we do? Maybe the power of art and the effort for solidarity. I think what we are doing now is also part of such effort to end such suffering. Now let me move on to our fourth presentation by Kang Hae-myung. Please take it away. Good afternoon, everyone. The presentations and the speeches I have heard so far really weighed down on my mind, so I kind of feel regrettable that I am the last speaker here, but still, I would like to say that the reason why the Jeju Island is so beautiful is because it harbors the painful history amidst its beautiful nature. A place that reminds us of the meaning of true peace by overcoming the times of upheaval. This is why Jeju should be recognized as an island of peace, and that we should all remember the history of Jeju April 3rd. My name is Kang Hae-myung, soprano from Jeju, and the artistic director for Aunt Suni, an opera featuring Jeju April 3rd incident. The Jeju April 3rd incident began with the firing of the police on March 1st, 1947, during the period of the U.S. military government. And since the armed uprising of the Jeju Provincial Party under the Workers' Party of South Korea then, on April 3rd, 1948, there was an armed conflict and clashes between the Workers' Party of South Korea and armed group to suppress the uprising. And during the process, countless residents and civilians were killed. So from March 1st, 1947 to September 21st, 1954, the Jeju April 3rd incident resulted in claiming lives of 30,000 victims. However, even after the uprising ended, the truth was not properly investigated, leading to a lot of conflict and pain for the victims and their bereaved families. So the first step in resolving this incident was to restore the honor of victims and bereaved families, an apology by the government, and national remembrance. And now that the amendment bill of the April 3rd Special Act was passed in the National Assembly, we have laid the groundwork to move to the stage where the government will proceed with compensation for the victims, including the recovery from damage. And after more than 70 years, I think it's time to wait for historical evaluation beyond political evaluation of the incident. And as an artist from Jeju, I thought I should create an artwork that can emphasize the pain of the times and raise awareness about it. I agree with the respected writer Hyun Ki-young, when he said that the culture and art are the only tools that give flesh and transfuse blood to the tragic history of the past and make it come alive. So Korea is the only remaining divided country on earth, and Jeju is the southernmost part of Korea. And I believe by making the pain of the history on the Jeju Island come alive, we can remember the value of peace and love from the perspective of art, and that is why I try to create the artwork regarding that. Actually, peace is especially valued in Jeju when thinking about its history. If we go back further in history, we can find the Daemong uprising of Sambyalcho of Goryeo, a special unit to defend the capital, and the rebellion staged by civilians against the invasion of the Japanese. And Jeju has been the target of invasions for so many years, so much so that we can see that it was a strategic base for Japanese soldiers during the Japanese colonial era, and Japanese Jeju people have been at the center of it. However, Jeju Island overcame all those hardships and now has emerged as an international peace city that contributes to the establishment of peace on the Korean peninsula and in Northeast Asia. At the beginning of my speech, I said that what makes Jeju Island so beautiful is because it harbors painful history in its beautiful nature. With that, I would like to show you a video.
시간만 허락된다면 오페라
If time allows, I hope I can show you the whole opera. But since I was given only 10 minutes, I showed you the highlight of the opera. This opera is so what we just saw was the ending performance of the Aunt Suni, the opera that I mentioned. I think you saw a list of people on the part. This was a list of people who were sacrificed in the Bukchon massacre. And our opera features some names, and actually all of the names except for a few names are from the actual victims. This is because we want to remember their death so that they will not be forgotten. This was what I and our directing team intended. So the original novel for this opera was actually the first novel to speak about this painful history of Jeju April 3rd incident. And this opera is a reinterpretation of the original novel by Hyun Gi-young. So I have been leading the production for 3 years of this opera as the general director, screenwriter, and main character at Uncle Suni. And the performance at the Sejong Center for the Performing Arts, which was the first performance since the COVID-19 prevention measures were lifted, took place with about 2,000 audiences. Despite the COVID-19 situation, history as records can change at any time at the whims of those in power. However, there is one thing that I believe about art. Just as the role of politics is to figure out matters related to politics, the evaluation about historical incidents would be the role of historians. Then what is the role of art? It is to form the consensus about the past history and laid the groundwork for future activities. I think a democratic society values diversity, and actually the mission of the time for artists is to practice that diversity. A democracy where such diversity is practiced has been what's behind the performance of Aunt Suni. So you just had a glimpse of Aunt Suni earlier, so let me show you some of its pictures. Yes, this is me. I will show you the poster for Aunt Suni, and the background is Nepunglang, which is where the actual massacre took place during the incident. And this scene, back in 1948 and 1907, on the Jeju Island, the victims were not able to voice their suffering because if they did so, then their family members or relatives would also be punished. However, before that tragedy, there was happy life of people in peace, and this scene depicted those people. And what about this scene? This is when the Aunt Suni found her children killed, shot dead by the bullets, and she found out that she was the only survivor and decided to start looking for her children. And what about this scene? This is the scene that shows Aunt Suni ending her life and going back to the graveyard where her children were buried, and the rest of the people are here now to honor the life of Aunt Suni. So this was the ending part that I showed you earlier. So can you repeat after me? The history is recorded, whereas art is remembered. The history that is not remembered can be repeated. Therefore, I believe we need to fight to make sure that the tragic history is not repeated by remembering it. So Aunt Suni is an opera created to illuminate the tragedy through art, so that such a tragedy does not happen again. Here's one message I want to leave you with. So Jeju Island is a very beautiful tourist destination. However, until this day, the Jeju Islanders have had to bear a lot of pain because of the tragic history. So please bear that in mind. And this might sound distant, but after unification, we need to think about what kind of country we want to build. And I think the answer lies in the Jeju April 3rd incident, because this incident took place because of the ideological difference on this small island. However, overcoming this tragedy, the Jeju Islanders have come to build this island of peace. I hope the Jeju Islanders can feel a sense of pride about this. The opera Aunt Suni always ends with a message that it wants to convey to its audience. So 2 years ago, when this performance was first staged, we called the National Assembly to pass the amendment bill of the Special Act on Jeju April 3rd incident, because the National Assembly was ignoring the tears of the bereaved families. And now that the amendment bill was passed, we also sent a message about why it is important to give a proper name to the Jeju April 3rd incident. And now I would like to end my presentation with the ending message that our last performance conveyed. The Jeju people overcame their wounds and pain in the ruined land and built a beautiful island of peace. Through the Jeju April 3rd incident, we need to think about the universal values of peace and human rights again. This is why we all need to meet Aunt Suni. Thank you.
네.
Thank you very much for your presentation. As she is directing the opera and Suni, she is confessing her true emotion about the April 3rd incident. Now, let us begin the discussion. We'd like to receive questions from the audiences. And please note that Ms. Olga Gravanik is joining us online. Writer Kim Sum just mentioned that our world is connected to your world. Solidarity for promoting peace is something that we need to believe, and this is about believe ourselves. Even though we are using different languages, one thing that we are joining with Ms. Olga is something I believe a signal that we are all connected. First, I like to ask novelist Kim Sum about your comment. So, how was your impression? I didn't experience Korean War. I'm not the generation that experienced war. And I was not in the forced migration train of the Korea people. And when we think about their pain, I cannot dare truly understand their pain. However, I am still writing their painful emotion without fully understanding their experience. And I thought about this for the whole process while I was writing the book, and while I was experiencing that, there are many people in culture and art sectors who are drawing and who are writing their hurts and scars. And as I am hearing their presentation, I feel a very heavy heart. And even though I talk about peace, and I believe that my peace and their peace might have different weight. However, we still believe that the values of goodness, and I was very grateful to hear the presentation of the good people, and I feel their pain truly. And I also had an opportunity to read the book War Diary before I come into this stage, and I read a very impressive sentence, and I like to quote. If you have a book, please open page 14. They think they are praying with tear, as if they have no hands, and as if they feel their pain of cutted hands. The reason why I write this diary is to say, stop war. There's no winner in the war. There's only blood, destroy, and there's only a big hole in each and everyone's heart. I've been through many things. However, I've met many good people who wanted to help me. And I believe we should be that good people too. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your quoting. And Miss Kang, also, I'd like to ask your comment from the presentation. And also, I'd like to ask Miss Gravennik for your comment.
So in June, I was writing columns for Jungang Daily News, and one column was about supporting Ukraine. And at the outset, I wrote about how the glory and freedom of Ukraine were not dead. I said that, brothers and sisters, the fate will smile at us. Brothers, we will govern the land that we love. This is the part I wrote in my article, and this was from the poet by a nationalist poet from Ukraine named Paulo Nobisky. And actually, the opera, I once participated in the opera about Ukraine as well. I'm at a loss at how to comfort the people suffering in Ukraine, and actually, I have no idea what I can do to actually help the people in Ukraine. But as an artist, I think we need to comfort people who are in tragedy, and think we need to keep engaging in the artistic activities to make sure that this tragedy is not repeated. And I'd like to say that I hope that this tragedy will end. Please hold on. So this is my message.
한국에서
I'd like to also ask Ms. Gravennik for your comment. You are joining us online from Bulgaria to Korea, and we are talking about solidarity and peace, and I'd like to ask for your comment. In Ukraine, we are experiencing a tragedy every day. Everyday people, innocent people, my mother and our children are suffering. So, from their moments of being children, they are experiencing the changing values of their life. That's why I am drawing illustration. And thankfully, Korean publisher Munhak Dongnae published my drawing to a book. I was very surprised and I was very happy for your interest from Korea. Thank you.
올해는
So that was what Ms. Olga had to say. Then Ms. Olena, do you have anything you'd like to comment? First of all, let me thank you once again for inviting me to the Jeju Forum and for giving me an opportunity to speak to you. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity. As I live in Korea, I heard the news about the breakout of war in Ukraine. At first, I didn't believe it. I thought this could not be true. However, watching the news, I saw how the freedom is being lost worldwide, and I saw a lot of things that are actually happening in reality. When we read historic books, this kind of tragic history actually happened before. However, some might say that this history is only history and we are not experiencing such tragedy, but actually Ukraine is experiencing such tragedy. So as I said, as I'm living in Korea, I realized how much support that Koreans have provided for Ukraine. And I also learned that Ukraine is not alone and the world is helping Ukraine. There are a lot of people out there who are helping us. They are helping us through a lot of channels. And I think this forum is part of such support. A lot of time has passed since the start of the war, but still, Korean people are trying to raise awareness about the tragedy of war. I think I'm really grateful for such efforts. So you keep spreading words about war and what we need to do. So such stream of effort is very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand we are all having a very heavy heart altogether because this is a tragedy that our neighbors are experiencing today. So we had discussion so far and we have many audiences in here. So I'd like to receive questions from the audiences. If you have any question, please. If you raise your hand, it will be really great. Do we have any question? Compared to other session of the forum, it was a very heavy session, I understand. So I understand that you might think, what should we ask and what should we talk about in this heavy session? We have experts here, writer Kim Sum, Olena Shidorchuk, and soprano Kang. And I truly hope that this venue can be the moment that we share our hope and our encouragement to the people in the crisis. So why don't we make a big applause? Please give a big round of applause to those who are suffering at this moment. Thank you. Peace is not far from us, and we have many people in all around the world who are supporting the people who are suffering today. In today's session, we talked about the power of art, and we talked about how art fought against violence, and art and literature became a resource to fight against the violence, and we talked about that truth. Some say that art is the most soft and gentle sword to fight against violence. It's gentle and soft, however, it is still a sharp criticism. And last but not least, I like to thank all the speakers of today because as an everyday person, they share the experience and meaning of culture and art, and they share their insight to all of us. So I believe that today's venue was a very meaningful moment for all of us. And thank you very much for today's speakers for joining us today. And please give a warm round of applause once again. Thank you. Without culture, our life will be nothing. And we have experienced that during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'd like to ask for your interest to the culture session of Jeju Forum. I'd like to conclude the 2022 Jeju Forum Art and Culture session. Thank you.